1 so that we're not here until Sunday. It is because mental health is as important as your physical health.
I'm passionate about mental health because it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. So I push out what I'm building that's called TEAM, Therapeutic Emergency Advocacy Mentorship. What we want to do, we want to become a 24 to 48 hour response when there's a crisis situation dealing with our youth. So one day I was working in one of the schools, and these two young ladies came into one of the school buildings, and they were trying to get a meeting with the community resource person. And they were getting shut down at every corner. I knew she was dynamic just based on her personality and her push to talk to the right person, because she wasn't taking no for an answer. So this media personality with Fox 19, this advice columnist of Cincinnati Herald, and the author of I Am Who I Say I Am, and community influencer of Cincinnati Magazine. Her name is Ashley. She is going to be she's going to be the host today. So I love her, and it was a pleasure to introduce you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, you all look so beautiful sitting here, coming together to talk about the importance of Black mental health. And I want you to give yourselves a round of applause for being here. So for those of you that don't know me, he kind of listed off my titles. But one of the things that are most important to me is positive self-talk. I like to have everyone do affirmations before I start an event. So I'm going to have you repeat after me. My mental health is my responsibility.
My mental health is my responsibility.
And I plan to take care of it.
And I plan to take care of it.
I embrace help when needed.
I embrace help when needed.
And I break barriers that try to limit me.
And I break barriers that try to limit me.
I am surrounded by people who respect my mental health.
I am surrounded by people who respect my mental health.
And the boundaries that I have created for myself.
And the boundaries that I have created for myself.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Okay, so our first welcome is going to be from Dr. Don Thomas of Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Don.
I'm Don Thomas, and I work for the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services in the Office of Prevention. And I bring you greetings today from Governor Mike DeWine and our agency director, Lloyd Chris. As she said, mental health and wellness is really critical to our physical, spiritual, and social well-being as well. And when it comes to accessing services, we have to access services at the right time and the right service. And we know that disparities exist in our system, and that stigma is real, particularly for Black folks, right? And that's why we're all here today. I applaud the Black Women Cultivating Change and the sponsors that are here today for putting this on, particularly for doing it at the right time, because it's July and it's National Minority Mental Health Month.
She started this company with the intent to help people from a spiritual perspective. She has been on a journey of wellness since 2014, and anybody who has been on their journey of wellness knows that it is never ending. It is always changing, it is always evolving, and it is a constant journey. When she isn't healing, she enjoys spending time with her husband and her 2 children. Please give Ms. Michelle another round of applause.
Really what meditation is us breathing and bringing ourselves back to our bodies. This is our physical body, our survival, our finances. Then we have our emotional center. We have our child and pleasure-like energy area. We have our strength, our determination. We have another aspect, which is our heart. How do you think about yourself? What is going on in your head when you're sitting down? Are you thinking negatively? When you speak, is it coming from a place of love? Is it coming from a place of impact positively for other people? Then we have our intuition, our inner voice, our inner guidance. And then it's our connection to the universe, the divine energy that flows through all of us. So first, I want everyone who is going to participate to close their eyes. So I just want to play something that's going to relax you. This is my wave bow. And with your eyes closed, I'm going to play a particular ball, and I want you to tell me where you feel it. And then when you really get good, you take those real deep breaths in, and then you can start to, oh, I'm bringing in peace, I'm bringing in love, I'm bringing in joy. And you focus on bringing those things within yourself, and then it just radiates without you. It works really, really well for shifting your energy.
Ms. Cairns has received a master's degree in social work from the University of Cincinnati. She's a licensed independent social worker with supervisor designation from the Ohio Social Worker, Marriage and Family Board. She has dedicated her working career to social services. She takes pride in advocating for others and empowering others to advocate for themselves. She is employed with the Cincinnati Police Department as the Health Programs Manager Witness Advocacy. And she sums up her role by saying, we all do things victim related. She was honored and named Social Worker of the Year at the National Association of Social Workers Ohio Chapter Region 6 Awards ceremony in 2019. And she was also humbled to be honored by the University of Cincinnati Social Work Alumni Board with the Distinguished Alumni Award in 2020. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Karen Rumsey.
I've had a long career as a social worker. I've done quite a few things. All things I'm pretty proud of. Substance abuse, child welfare, you name it, I've been there and probably done that. The topic is gun violence and trauma. We are having an extreme number of juveniles not only being impacted by gun violence, being murdered right here in the city of Cincinnati, but what you don't probably see, there's a large number of young folks as young as 14 that are awaiting trials for having done those things. I heard the brother talk about the group that he's starting or already has in place. How do we help heal your trauma here before you are showing it as broken up here? I bet you in this research that a large proportionate of young people who are charged with this horrible crime of murder have been impacted and had a loved one. Come on. What can we do, mental health professionals, people who care about mental health? What can we do? In 2006, the Cincinnati Police Department created what was called the Victims Advocate Unit. We do all things victim. So that is whatever type of assistance you might need based on what just happened to you. Somebody's going to listen to you. Somebody is going to respond to what you said you need. And somebody's going to let you yell and scream at them if that's what you feel like you need to do. It's getting each other to talk to each other and not shoot each other. Have a conversation. Bring it up at the dinner table. It's just like we can't continue to be silent.
She is engaged in community partnerships with coalitions such as African American Engagement Work Groups, and she is a member of the A1 Stigma Free Coalition. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Rashida Pearson.
My name is Rashida, and I am a member of A1 Stigma Free Coalition.
And our mission is to help reduce the overdose deaths in the African American community by providing evidence-based treatment, education, and resources, period.
How many of you are aware of what fentanyl is? How many of you are aware that fentanyl is in all of the street drugs? Wanna Hills in 2022, they had the highest overdose rate in the state of Ohio amongst African Americans. The community is telling us that they have been impacted by losing a loved one due to smoking marijuana.
There's miseducation, misinformation, and misinterpretation of what's going on the streets. So we are grateful for the participation of our local churches, the 11 churches and more, that are willing to help combat the opioid crisis in our African American community.
The message here today is that everyone should have Narcan. It's funny how I ended up in this position. I've been here for a year and a half with CARICO. My background is mental health. I work with transitional youth for about 20 years. I promise you, once I got into this position, I started connecting the dots of people that I personally know that have died of overdoses. And if we don't share these stories when we lose a loved one that's been impacted by fentanyl, how do the community really know what's going on? Because the way we learn and understand is through other people's stories, through other people's lives. We got to start speaking out about these situations. This is a movement. When we start really tapping into our mental health and our social issues as a community, and we learn to combat them together, we can progress forward.
Cohere is a community engagement and strategy company, and she was also selected as one of 10 inspirational women with stories to share by the Key Cam project released in October 2018. Please give a round of applause for Ms. Monique Gilliam.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Thank you so much, Black Women Cultivating Change, for the invitation to have me share a little bit about my story. I was about 13 years old. It was in 93, right before I became a freshman in high school. My father was murdered. He was murdered, he was shot and killed, essentially while trying to protect a pregnant female from being beat up by her boyfriend. He lost his life as a result of that. A few months later, right before I went into high school, I learned that my mother was dealing with mental illness. Essentially, her diagnosis when I was young was manic depression, and we know now that that is more or less identified as bipolar. When I was about 16 years old, I was home when my mother had one of those suicide attempts. She had slit her wrist, and I, went and put towels around her arms, and she pleaded with me to let her die. But of course, that's my mother, my everything. I didn't want her to die. Not too long after that, my brother also was diagnosed with manic depression, and he too had a suicide attempt. When I went to the University of Cincinnati, my freshman year in college is when those, where their illnesses really came to a head. My freshman year, my great-grandmother, the matriarch of our family, the reason we had Easter and Thanksgiving dinners, she passed very suddenly of cancer. There was really no time to process that. And that was my freshman year in November of '97 at UC. My sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year, my brother was 16, he committed suicide. That was in May of '99. And in that same year, my mother's mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother's daughter, died in September of '99 from AIDS. And then in December of 2000, my mother committed suicide. And so with all of those losses, people always say, how do you keep going? How do you keep going? And I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual. And so I have a true belief in God, and I believe that God only puts us through things for us to empower others. Everyone essentially has something that they have to get over, and I feel like with what I've endured, it's allowed me to be a blessing to others. Never allow yourself to not be the best. I show up even sometimes when I don't want to show up. And honestly, I have been afforded my greatest blessings simply because I showed up. You know what I'm saying? So show up for yourself. Don't look to anyone else to give you the happiness that you need. It starts within. And that's what I look to. When I look in the mirror, no hype. I hype myself. I'm like Issa Rae. You know what I'm saying? When she hyping and rapping, that's me. Because no one else is going to hype me up the way that I hype me up. So that's what I do each and every time. And I just want to empower all of you to look within yourself and, utilize the light that God has given each of us to be a blessing to others. Thank you.
So next, we are going to have a conversation about the adverse childhood experiences. We are going to have this conversation with Dr. Chantel Thomas. of a Sound Mind Counseling and Center for Healing the Hurt. Dr. Thomas is a published author, president, CEO, and founder of the Center for Healing the Hurt. It's a free trauma-based therapy center for youth in the Cincinnati area. She is also the CEO of a Sound Mind Counseling and has been trained and certified in numerous counseling techniques such as depression, women's issues, trauma, and crisis intervention. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Thomas.
One of my favorite songs is Party Up, because he's just talking about it all. Lose your cool, I'm about to go off. You know, sometimes we can go off. Today I'm going to be talking about adverse childhood experiences. And those are just potentially traumatic events. They're things that can happen in life that can impact us for the rest of our life. And so they're things like a car accident, or having a parent that's incarcerated, or not being fed, being in a tornado, being in a fire. Research says if you can get them between 3rd grade and 5th grade, you can stop the impact that it can have on the rest of their life. So we're trying to start young, getting into the schools here, working with our young children. We're all trained in trauma and trauma certified. And so therefore we're using some different trauma certifications that we have to work with them to help the kids through this experience that they have had. So if you had a score of 6 or more, those people could live up to 20 years less than everybody else. If you had an ACE of 4 or more, you're 3 times more likely to develop lung disease, 14 times more likely to attempt suicide, 4.5 times more likely to develop depression, this is you have a score of 4 or more, 11 times more likely to try an intravenous drug, 4 times more likely to attempt or have sex before the age of 15, and 2 times more likely to have liver disease. So knowing your score is very important. And knowing that truly, if I have 4 or more, I need to see a therapist. I should be talking to my doctor about my ACE score. I should see a therapist to talk about how I can deal with this trauma and get rid of it, because you can work through the trauma and release it. It's been proven. Research says those that see therapists are healthier than those that do not. So just going and talking to somebody about what's going on in your life and what's happening.
I really appreciate the time being spent here. And one of the things I want to talk about, just a little bit about my background. My name is Patricia Lyons. My enemies call me Dr. Lyons because I got those degrees for them. Because I'm saying the same thing I was saying all along, but now I have those degrees and they can't push me away from the table. So I had to figure my way in order to get to where I was going. So for all of you, you're my friend. My name is Pat. You can call me anytime. I use the same phone number for my business as I do for my other business. I do all these things. I write grants. I write contracts. I have my own counseling practice as well. One of the things that I don't do is actually look for the reason why someone is sitting in front of me. My mother was 24 and had 6 kids. And by the way, one of us happened to be deaf and blind, so I am also very prevalent and frequently I'm proficient in tactile sign language. So I have a brother who's deaf-blind. My mother was 24, and I can remember always having to write the notes for my siblings when we missed school. And one day I decided to be a smarty pants. And she said, write the note. And I was like, why do I have to write the note? I'm not the mama. And she said, well, if I knew how, I would. It was the very first time I realized that my mom could not read. The very first time. Now I'm in high school, mind you. And so again, when we think about the masks that we wear and the spaces and places that we have to endure to make sure that our kids and our family members grow up and all of the things that happen. And so one of the things that we want to talk about is when we think about safe spaces and what does that look like, right? And it's not necessarily a building or a place or an objective or any of those things, but also we want to talk about language, right? What I do is talk about the importance of conversation, right? The importance of conversation. One of the things that will happen today is you probably have been exposed to a lot of numbers. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about all of these numbers and those. What does that really mean? What does it mean to say that we're building or we are trying to empower? What does that really look like? What space does that take up? How does it look? When we talk about equity, it's not something that sits on the shelf and when it's time to borrow it, we can pull it off the shelf and say, okay, here's what we're going to do now. Here's this equity program to prevent child abuse and neglect in the Black community, or to prevent lung cancer from happening, or breast cancer, all of the other things. It doesn't work that way. I am not my trauma. I need you to stop looking at all the things that happened to me and decide from this point on, this is where I'm going to go. We have to really find a space to say, research has shown us one thing, but we also know that we've moved beyond that. If you get stuck looking at folks and looking at their trauma, you never see the resiliency that shows up. So you've already projected that I'm never going to finish high school, I'm never going to graduate, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that, I'm never going to do it. There is somebody in this room that has done all those things in spite of. My mother could not read. She had 6 kids by 4 different men, and one of us happened to be deafblind. Imagine thinking about that, right? We think of that as our caseload, as a client. I see that as my mother, right? And so imagine now today everybody has to call me Dr. Lyons. And they have no idea that that's the connection. Because to them, what they see today could not have been what is in the history. We have to be very cognizant of the words that we use when we're talking to people, but you also can't assume that I know those words unless you ask me. And so we have to begin to talk about that in that safe space. And so again, thinking about the way we think about our world and how we create safe spaces. If you're into therapy and you talk about therapy, you have to also have your clients understand that, listen, push back on that therapist. Because if you can't say to your therapist, I don't like what you just said, I don't appreciate it, I don't agree, and perhaps I might not even do it. If you can't have those kinds of exchange conversations in this development, then you have to be careful that you are not just mimicking what someone else is now giving. One of the things I always tell people is that we have what we need, we just need a safe place to practice. I want all of us to go out here and really be responsible for self, meaning self-care. Do what you need to do what you can do. But also remember that there's sometimes you won't be able to do everything. Ask for help. Everybody needs some help sometimes.
I'm proud to represent Talbot House today. And Talbot House is part of the leadership in the Hamilton County Suicide Prevention Coalition. We need more representation from the Black community. The Black community is getting more and more heavily impacted by suicide. The Hamilton County Coalition is made up of people and groups and organizations working to change the community to be more representative to the needs, gaps, and concerns of families and individuals struggling with suicide and other mental health issues.
Our organization is a local nonprofit in Cincinnati, and our mission really is to normalize the conversation around mental health. We work out with about 130 schools in Cincinnati. We're doing prevention work. We're educating students, staff, and parents in that space. And we're also doing quite a bit of work out in the community.
We are passionate about life is better with you here. We are passionate about the Black community. We are passionate about suicide prevention in the Black community. As has been mentioned before, it is, and our young people, they are committing suicide. It's imperative that we can no longer say we can sweep it up under the rug. We are dying because we are not talking.
My name is Ryan Sickles. I'm with the University of Cincinnati's Early Intervention Program. Some of the main things we focus on are HIV testing, Hep C testing. We do a screening for substance use and mental health, and then help them get connected to those resources. We are thankful to be a part of this today because, as we know, many African Americans are suffering from a lot of different things that they aren't necessarily willing to speak about. And sometimes it's that friendly face in the emergency department when it feels like it's very urgent. Someone that's just listening, someone that cares, someone that takes the time to bring a pillow, that can start that conversation and really get at what they need. Introducing the flyest mayor that we have ever had in the city of Cincinnati, Mayor Aftab Pureville. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much to Black Women Cultivating Change for letting me join you briefly here today. And thank you to everyone here for all you're doing to make Cincinnati a place where everyone has the care and attention needed to thrive. From a public safety perspective, while we've worked with our police to target violent crime as the top priority in our city government, we've also built an approach that is trauma-informed. We last year went a step further. and are now one of the only cities in the country that has a solely mental health response for some of our 911 calls. Well, I'm extraordinarily grateful that you've stepped up in whatever capacity to be a part of the change that we need, and I hope you know that we are here to be a partner with you as we move forward. Thank you very much. And it's now my pleasure to present a proclamation celebrating this day. Look at that. I can assure you I did not frame this, so be it proclaimed from the desk of the mayor, whereas Black Women Cultivating Change has built relationships and helped reduce the stigma related to mental health and wellness in the Black community by advocating, educating, and hosting numerous community events and workshops to bring resources and healing to the community by meeting others where they are. Now, therefore, I, Aftab Pureval, Mayor of the City of Cincinnati, do hereby proclaim July 21st as Black Mental Health and Wellness Day in Cincinnati. Congratulations.
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
nice.
thanks for the hug, and